Alright, so this is Chapter 4, Section 5. Name of this section is Add and Subtract Mixed Numbers. And this is the last section before the test. We've added and subtracted like fractions, added and subtracted unlike fractions. Now we've got mixed numbers. So when we add and subtract mixed numbers, some of them are really easy to do. They're very straightforward. For example, if we had something like 3 3/4 minus 1 1/4, well, this one, denominators are already the same. You look at it and you say, okay, for the whole numbers, 3 minus 1 is 2, and 3/4 minus 1/4, that's going to leave 2/4, and I can reduce that to 2 1/2. That one's not too bad. Sometimes you might get something where all you have to do is just make it into a like fraction, give it a common denominator. For example, 8 5/6 minus 2 1/3. Six is a larger denominator. 3 goes into that, so we're going to use that denominator. So I'm going to rewrite this as 8 5/6 minus, since 6 is the new denominator, I had to multiply this by 2. If I multiply that by 2 on bottom, I have to do it on top. 2 times 1 is 2. And now I say 8 minus 2 is 6, and 5 minus 2 is 3. So I have 6 3/6. This reduces to 6 1/2. So those are the easier versions. But for most of these, you're going to run into stuff where you have to borrow from a whole number, or the two fraction parts are going to add up to a whole or whatnot. So my recommendation for you is to turn these all into improper fractions. And if you don't, some of the confusing things you'll run into would be something like this. Let's take a look. We've got 2 1/3 plus 1 2/3. Now when I add this, if I look at just the whole numbers, 2 plus 1 is 3. Well, 1/3 and 2/3, how many thirds is that, class? 3/3. And then I'm like, well, 3/3, that's a whole, so this is like 3 plus 1, which equals 4. If we want to avoid all this, and even more complicated things, what we do is turn these into improper fractions. Let's take a look. Let's say we had 2 1/3 minus 1 2/3. Well, here, if I did the subtraction, if I said, well, 2 minus 1 is 1, but then 1/3 minus 2/3, I can't do that unless I go into negatives. An easy method for this, 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So the improper fraction here is 7/3. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So the improper fraction here, 5/3. Well, 7/3 minus 5/3, 7 minus 5 is 2. Denominator's 3, there's my answer, 2/3. The whole number is gone because we made these into improper fractions.
And it just stays like that.
And it just stays like that. Now, let's take a look at another one. Let's say we just had a whole number minus a mixed number. Again, turn these into improper fractions. For the whole number, how do I make a whole number into a fraction? I put it over what? 1. So I'm going to rewrite this as 5 over 1 minus 2 2/5. Next step, how do I make this into an improper fraction? Well, 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So I have 12/5 here, and I still have 5 over 1 here. Label this A, B. Now, common denominator here, 5. 1 goes into 5, no problem. So, to go from 1 to 5, I had to multiply by 5 on bottom, so I multiply by 5 on top. 5 times 5 is 25. This stays the same because the denominator was already 5. And now I subtract. 25 minus 12 is 13. 5 goes into 13 twice with a remainder of 3. Denominator stays the same. And in case you're wondering, I did this long division style. Top number in the box. 5 went into 13 twice, and the remainder was 3. That's the whole number, that's the new numerator, and that's adding and subtracting with mixed numbers.